Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Karen Bigelow. I have been on the Be Civic Summit Committee this year, and I manage corporate social responsibility and public relations for Premier Members Credit Union. I want to thank you so much for joining us for the last workshop of the day, Making the Change, Trust-Based Philanthropy and Collective Impact Partnerships. I'm thrilled to welcome our panelists, Eric Lazzari, the Civic Center Conservancy. He was named the Executive Director in November of 2019. He joined the Civic Center Conservancy in November 2011, bringing extensive event operations and program management experience to his initial role there. We have Erin Roberts, who's the Director of Music Ecosystems at Youth on Record. She works with young artists to match them to learning and work opportunities. She's a musician, friend, and community arts executive with over 20 years of experience working in radio, music management, and artist development. Next, we have Erica McIntyre. She's the Colorado Market Executive for Bank of America. Eric supports the local market goals of connecting businesses, families, and individuals to the banking and investment teams that will help improve their financial lives. She is responsible for developing community partnerships, sponsorships, and philanthropy in the Denver market and across the Colorado footprint, as well as the development and execution of the market strategic plan designed to drive responsible growth, employee engagement, brand reputation, and commit to the community. Okay. So, Lori Larita is Operations Manager for Youth Employment Academy. Social Enterprise, Osage Cafe Culinary Academy, Cafe and Mercado, as well as the community grocery store in the Sun Valley neighborhood, Decatur Fresh. Under her leadership over the past 18 years, YEA has served over 5,000 youth, with a majority reaching their goals of graduating from high school or earning a GED, going on to college and receiving other occupational certifications and becoming employed. As a reminder, all of the workshops will be recorded and resources mentioned will be available after the summit for all attendees. Oh my gosh.
We can deal with it.
Thank you. So we had a speaker change tonight. We will be discussing that next. Welcome, Eric. Thank you.
Is this my clicker? There we go. All right, we're going to do this. Hi. Again, I'm Eric Lazzari. I'm the Executive Director of the Civic Center Conservancy. I would like to belatedly welcome you to Civic Center Park. The building you sit in, the McNichols building, is Denver's original library, opened in 1908. It was actually here before the park was here, so there's a fun Denver fact for you. And we're not going to get the opportunity to do this today, but one of my favorite things to do when I get in front of a group of people from Denver is ask them to share their Civic Center story. So if you need that icebreaker at happy hour a little bit later, talk about what Civic Center has meant in your life, or a story or a field trip or some experience you've had in Civic Center, because I think that's one of the common threads we all have here in Denver is we've experienced something in this space. And we're so thrilled to collectively experience this panel with you this evening. And I'm going to first, we did our bios, but I'm going to give a chance for our panelists here to talk a little bit about more about who they are, their role in this partnership that we're going to talk about, and then we'll get into some questions.
Hello, I'll go first. Speaker change. Erin's bio is like, that's not me. I am not an artist, but I work with a lot of artists. So my name is Andrea Villarreal Murphy, and I am the Deputy Director for Youth on Record. I've been with the organization for 13 years, 8 years on staff, so I've done everything minus perform, and I've done a little teeny bit of teaching. So I run all of our people and culture, which is exciting and hard and struggle. There's a lot of struggles there, and I'm excited to see our staff here on this screen here. So how I was a participant in this project, just really supporting our team making sure, our team was going out to have lunch to support our young people. We'll get into more of like the career advancement piece around invoicing and W-9s and all that, but yeah, that's my role, and I'm not a musician.
Hi? Yes? No?
Yeah, I think you got to turn it on.
Turn it on. Yes. All right. There you are. I am not a technology person. I'm a banker. Erica McIntyre, otherwise known as Erica from Bank of America, so you all remember. Let's see, I'm a funder. I'm one of the supporters of this program, and I think we're going to get a little bit more into that, but excited to be able to be here in this building with that kind of history with these incredible partners here.
Hi there, my name is Lori Larita, and I am the operational manager for the Youth Employment Academy. Under that umbrella, we do have 3 social enterprises that we manage, that we do skills training and life skills, but the YEA program is part and affiliated with the Denver Housing Authority. And so my piece in the Civic Center EATS is having my students that come to our classes and get certifications and get training to really get them in the hands of other employers on ways of communicating, ways of expanding their skills. We were late in the game, but I tell you what, it was one of the best experiences we had was working with the Civic Centers, is really just having an expansion of our program.
Well, thank you all. And just a little bit of context for me and the Conservancy. I'm Eric Lazari, the Executive Director of the Conservancy. And one of the things and what we're going to be talking about today is something Civic Center EATS that hopefully many of you have spent time at, come to the food trucks down in the park in the summer. And this panel is talking about an evolution for us of it stopped being during the pandemic just a place to come and grab lunch. We really identified the opportunity to really use it as a platform for collective social impact. And so we're going to describe a little bit more about what that means, but at the core of it was bringing a table together of partners and funders to achieve a common good. In this case, it was around youth development. So the title of our panel today is led by the term trust-based philanthropy, which is something that's gained a lot of steam, especially in the individual donor community over the past several years, certainly highlighted by Mackenzie Scott and what she's been doing to our partners here at to nonprofits like Youth on Record, and really giving unrestricted funding into the community. And so we're putting a lens on that here with corporate philanthropy, and that's why we're up here today. So before I go through some definitions that we can pull from the internet, when we talk about trust-based philanthropy, what does that mean to you or your organization? Lori, let's start down there. We'll mix up the order here as we go.
So what it means to me, and as for Youth Employment Academy and Denver Housing, is really being a staple for our communities that we serve. So we serve 29,000 families with Denver Housing, but half of that is 18 and under youth. So it's really our goal and our mission is to really focus on providing those skills maybe they're not receiving at home, and how can we better support stopping that generational poverty and really give them those skills to grow on. So what it means to us is having a program or a partner that is well known, that has gained the trust from our youth, our young adults, working with young kids and young adults. It's really about trust. It takes a while. It's not, you're employed and let's start communicating like we would as an adult. So it's really just saying, okay, let me meet you where you're at, and let's see how we can build on those skills. So I feel like, for me, what has helped our group and our team is to really have partners that have that same plan and idea for working with our youth and making sure that we're really supporting building their attitudes, building who they are. We're part of it, and this isn't just a job for people that work in our development. We are part of their lives. I felt like out of the window when you say, okay, don't get to know them, don't, try to learn their where they're at. No, you have to know who you're communicating with, you're teaching, who you're employing, and really giving them that safe space to really come to and know that just because they're not doing a service, they can still come to us on a new need. So I hope I answered that question right, but it really is about trust and being a community member that is consistent. Consistency is how we build our trust, and I think, Youth on Record, and I've talked about that so many times, they come here because they want to trust in something more than what they've maybe had growing up.
Erica.
Well, some of you might hear banking and finance and think it's a transactional type of business, but I think to us it's relational, and that is exactly what you were talking about. And it may sound cliche, but we look at trust as a savings account. You continue to make deposits and planning for the future. So as a funder, as a bank, we make investments in nonprofits, and then we get out of the way and let them do what's right for who they serve. And in the case of Civic Center Conservancy, we did exactly that. You had a foundation of building an effective workforce development program. We came to you with a need of funding a summer youth employment program, and you ran with it. And I can't wait to dig into it a little bit more, but thank you for that.
Thank you for doing that. For me, I'll echo what Lori shared also in just a second, but the trust-based piece for us is working with a partner who sees the work that our team is doing, trusts our team to do that work, and your words to get out of the way, but how do we reimagine what these strings that come with funding look like, and the hoops that we often have to jump through. Lori and I were sharing some experiences early on the way here of just we're going through some hard stuff with our young people right now. And so to have all of that, to take care of your team, still serve the community, and then have 12 to 15 to 20 reports to fill out is exhausting. And so I think when we break down those walls and really build relationships, there's opportunity for more collaboration, more creativity, expansion, innovation. So yeah, I'm excited to see what we can do together next year.
Yes, for sure. So up on your screen, if you can see it, I think there's screens on the wings as well, is from the National Philanthropic Trust on what trust-based philanthropy is. Like I said, this is a concept that exists a lot more in individual giving now, but is coming into corporate giving and foundational giving. And I'm not going to read this slide up to you. I think there's a QR code there that you can just go grab the source material for this if you want. But the key with trust-based philanthropy is, as we heard, is this idea of a relationship. It's about taking the time to develop that relationship and letting all the people sitting at the table of that has been assembled to do what they do best. And key principles when we look at this from the National Philanthropic Trust: unrestricted grant making, donor transparency, being involved in the relationship, donor proactivity, not waiting for something to come to you. I'm going to have a question on that towards the end, but it's a different way to give as well. And so just wanted to center us in, first, our panel's definitions of trust-based philanthropy and how we're looking at it from our perspectives, but also what we're seeing out there in the literature as well. Okay, so you're going to get to see some cool pictures of Civic Center as we go along here. But let me center in this specific platform, this youth development program that we've talked about at Civic Center EATS. And in a perfect world, I would have been able to also bring up my partners from Barefoot and bring up my partners from Delta Dental and bring up my partners from Westward, who all have a role in Civic Center EATS, whether that be food security, whether that be sustainability, and water access, or making sure that this event can happen, but it can't. We're going to focus on the youth development piece because this is something that was new to us this year, and I think is the best example of how we're working in trust-based philanthropy. And so, what this program is for Civic Center years, it's been part of this community for 15 years. We have always hired folks to come and set up tables and chairs and take the trash to the dumpster and things like that. We've always hired musicians to come into Civic Center Park, and same ones you see at farmers markets throughout the city and things like that. But we flipped it this year. When Erica came to us, she had been a partner of ours in our workforce development that has to do with horticulture and maintenance in the park, where we've worked with unhoused individuals. She came to us and said they were really looking for a partner in youth workforce programming. And so we, as the team got together, me being the executive director, first asked my team, we never want to say no to money, but is this mission creep for us? Are we ready for us? And as I've talked with other EDs about this sort of thing, we always have to be careful of that. It's always easy to say yes to the money, but we knew this was something that we eventually wanted to do. And the fact that we had a willing and trusted partner ready to walk on this journey with us became very important in our internal conversations to be able to say yes. And so how this ultimately actualized was we approached it in two ways. We had the logistics of running Civic Center EATS. So as I mentioned, tables and chairs, umbrellas that have to be set up every single day, trash that has to be taken out, tables that have to be wiped up, people that are greeting people and making them feel safe and welcome in Civic Center Park. So we had that piece of it. And we used our model with working with unhoused individuals in Bayard on the horticulture, and can we be working with youth? And Urban Peak was an early partner with us, and we evolved to working with Youth Employment Academy. But it really talked about, can we use youth to that, pair them with a company, Aramark, who is the folks behind the scenes at Red Rocks, in this building, at Coors Field and things like that, and pair them in a mentorship relationship where youth can get experience in event production and what goes behind it. And then we looked at the music portion of Civic Center EATS that has always been there. And Youth on Record and the Conservancy have been trying to find something to do together for 3 or 4 years. And we've been trying to figure out that collaboration, because we know you as funders love collaboration. And so we had been trying to find it, and we hadn't found the right opportunity. Then all of a sudden, this was there, because we had youth, we had music, we had a willing funder that neither of us would have to say, we can do it, but we can't really afford to do it, and sort of thing. And so that's what came together. And so the youth from Youth Employment Academy, we talked about what they were doing, but on Youth on Record, all of the music this summer at Civic Center EATS was booked by youth, it was produced by youth, and then it was performed by youth, all under mentorship of adult mentors. And so all of a sudden, we've taken Civic Center EATS, which was really just about getting people out of their offices into the park and getting activity in the park, into really turning it into a platform for youth job creation, youth workforce. And so that's a little bit of kind of the context of this partnership. And so I'm going to go into some questions for our panel here. And Erica, you and I did a panel a couple months ago, and afterwards you're like, Eric, I didn't look at this as trust-based philanthropy when we approached into this. But you were the funder for the Conservancy to support this youth program pilot without knowing the exact details of what was going to happen. And who would be involved, who our partners would be, because we said we had to go out and find some partners. It involved a lot of trust. What factors led you to taking this leap on your side of this partnership to trusting the Conservancy?
An amazing Civic Center Conservancy team. Whoop, whoop. In my job is to connect Big Bank of America and deliver it locally. And one of the biggest resources that we have to do that is our philanthropic investments. And, employment is just a key factor in economic mobility. And so that's why one of our core pillars is workforce development. And as a bank, we've been working since 2011, putting in about $44 million in youth summer employment that employs about 27,000 youth and young adults in low-income communities through connections with nonprofits and government municipalities in summer youth employment opportunities. And here in Denver, we've been doing that since 2017 and had been working with the mayor's office. And so when we went to the mayor's office again and they said nicely that they didn't think they could be involved this year, I just didn't want to walk away from that opportunity. I couldn't walk away from the need to invest in a summer youth employment program, and it was kind of out of desperation, but yet Civic Center Conservancy, seeing your work in the Works program, knew that you had that foundation. And so just trusted that you would be able to bring the right partners together, whoever they were. I know we weren't prescriptive about that, and let you do what you do best. And what I thought was an even better example of that is that you had to pivot many times during the rollout of that program, and we gave you a very short runway to do it too. And I just think you just excelled at every single pivot of being responsive to what the changes needed to be and bringing the right people on board.
Well,
Did I answer the question?
Yeah, no, it was perfect. And, thank you for bringing up that concept of pivot, because I know that is a core element of trust-based philanthropy, because I think as, what we've seen is folks sitting in their offices, however engaged you are in the community, you're not the ones working with youth on the ground every single day. And so we have experts in that space to figure out exactly what's needed. Because when we put a grant application together, and this is, I think you all know this, but we're taking our best guess at what that program looks like. And we know we're going to have to pivot somewhere along the way. And so I'm going to I talk too much about that. I'm going to turn it over to our two nonprofit partners here. Tell me why that sort of attitude from the corporate foundation is important, this trust.
The young people that we're working with are coming from all different types of backgrounds, lived experiences, different financial scenarios, and so there's a lot of pivoting happening all the time with the young people that we're working with. And so I think not being pigeonholed into you have to work with this age group, this background, this zip code, just opens it up for us to weave in and out different youth. And this summer we had a young man who was unhoused, and he, Baba Fly, one of our young creative coaches, who's also a local hip hop artist, if you are out and about.
I'm going to pull Baba up here while you're talking.
Oh, yes. He's the DJ. He, is such a great mentor to these young people, and so we don't look at that as a barrier. So we were able to plug this young man in. He did a lot of coaching with him on performance, but we also had to do some coaching on how do I get an ID? How do I cash a check? How do we pay this person? And so I knew that was really important. I talked to him this morning, and that was something that was so important, that there was no restrictions on what types of young people could be a part of this program over the summer. So I think flexibility is so key, and the willingness to hear where the nonprofit partner's coming from, to have a voice in that is so key.
So I'm going to echo what Andrea said, but also add that pivot is so important. Prior to COVID, our work experience was in the kitchen, working at a cafe, front of the house, back of the house. COVID happened. Our program in our nonprofit, we solely work off of having that in-person training, having the youth come to the table for us to be able to know what skills we need to train and how we need to work together. And COVID, we had a lot of our kids that were in houses that weren't necessarily the safest. So we had to pivot and really change on ways we were going to still keep them interactive and keep providing a skill set, because we didn't know how long COVID was going to last, or we weren't going to stop what we were doing, and that was our goal, was to reach youth and give them those building skills and meeting them where they are. So if they were having any kind of emotion, or how am I going to make money? Because we're at home, we are struggling, not having food. We had to just really pivot. So having just a flexible program, we were able to change our concept to really do a wholesale component and know that this was a hybrid model. We were still training individuals through Zoom. We were trying to work on making sure, instead of that training dollars to go to one youth getting that certification, we could give them those funds to really do a tablet so they could participate in classes every day, so they have some other interaction from their household that may not be sad. So it was just really being able to pivot and change and say, okay, well, I can't serve 18 youth in person, But look, I've been able to serve, let's say, 35 because I had that flexibility to pivot and work on how I could engage more youth because of the circumstance. So every youth is different. Everybody has a different walk of life, but we do have them walk in the door and we figure out what their needs are. And you can't really have any, we have families that come that have never asked for resources before. We have to know how to serve them. We have some families that have always received services, but they're still not able to meet with those resources. So it's really just meeting them and not having that restriction on how we can provide support to youth and young adults. 24 and under, it's crazy. I have a 22-year-old, so I still see him as a baby, but some of our kids are 22 and they're just now asking for resources because they just didn't know where they were, or they had a responsibility at home that didn't allow them to really ask for help because they had, their schedule filled with taking care of the brother, feeding, putting food on the table. So it's just really important to have that unrestricted resource, and this allowed us to be able to support more youth for our program for that year. So just really appreciative. I do go off task sometimes, so I do just pull like that. Just pull me off the stage because I will start talking.
No, that's great. And every time I flip a picture here, I'm going to give you a little context. But these are some of our Civic Center Works crews. So for the past 2 years, through a grant from VF Foundation, we've been able to employ a crew of individuals transitioning out of homelessness through a partnership with Bayard Enterprises. And last year, in the first year of the program, 40% of the participants in the program went on to some version of permanent employment, several with Denver Parks and Recreation directly. We've had, we're wrapping up the season this year. We've had close to 50 participants go through the program this year, and we know we have some great success stories there as well. But again, this was an example as I look back at it, and I don't know if Gloria is in the room, but this was Gloria trusting us with an idea that hadn't been actualized yet, and they've continued to fund it. So we're truly thankful for that. But Erica, I want to ask you a question because I think we heard Kevin talk this morning in the keynote about the challenge you all are in as practitioners of being, the community serving goals are important, but being able to report and talk about bottom line impact upwards in the corporate environment. So how do you sell something like trust-based philanthropy internally?
Well, like I said, before we had that panel, I didn't even know that term existed, so it's good to know. I think it's organic, right? Yeah. That's one of the things. So my job is to be a good steward of the bank's resources, and I need to be able to make sure that we demonstrate that we're connecting our limited resources to the greatest community need. But we also have to make sure that we have a process that isn't biasing any of that, whether it's too complicated of a grant application process and it automatically takes out organizations. So I think we have a responsibility to check those biases at every point of working with our nonprofit partners. And then, I know I keep saying it, but then get out of the way and let you do what you do best. And I know this is going to flood me with applications, but we don't make you fill out forms to get more money, and we don't have an impact report that you have to fill out. What I do want is I want to meet with you. My team, we want to meet with you. We want to hear your stories. We want to amplify your stories. We want to be included in your stories. It's not completely altruistic. We want to be aligned with your brand as well and the work that you're doing in the community. And I think if there's any processes or forms or applications that are going to get in the way of that it's just a barrier to really what we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, and something that I would add, particularly about the relationship between the Conservancy and Bank of America, is it truly has been a relationship. And Bank of America, 6-7 years ago, when they first came big in the Denver market, was a sponsor of Civic Center EATS. All they were interested in was the branding at that time. But we've kept the relationship up with Bank of America through changes on their side. And we show up as a nonprofit at their events, so we can learn what's important to them. And so when Erica and I are having a conversation, or Erica's having a conversation with Sarah on our team, we know each other. We know what's important on each side. And I think for the nonprofits in the room, that relationship management is just as important, which takes time. And I think removing as many barriers on the front end and on the back end of some of these relationships become important, because we can be focused on the people involved in the relationship is truly important here.
And don't just reach out when it's time for a renewal. Like, talk to us through the whole process. Invite us out to engage and experience your nonprofits.
Yeah, no, for sure. So we've talked a little bit about the importance of pivot in this. And Lori, YEA wasn't an initial part of this program. We, like I mentioned, we had another youth partner at the beginning, and because of things that we had not anticipated in it, it really wasn't working to where it needed to be. And so our team, to their credit, started scouring relationships, scouring the internet for organizations that were involved in youth employment in Denver. And we luckily came across YEA. But tell us a little bit about being inserted into the program kind of as it was already going. And then a second part of that question is, now that we're actually talking about 2024, what is it going to mean to be at the table now in the planning process?
It wasn't planned, so we had a group reach out to us, and our program is always consistent. We do culinary training, we've done customer training, so that is a year-round service. So when we had that conversation about how we could work together, it was already part of the idea we've wanted. We had just had restricted funding. So we had just finished Culinary 2 at that point, and we had 12 students, completed certifications, ready to work, but because our program was limited with the slots that we had available for internships, we had 6 individuals that weren't able to do that hands-on work experience. So I really do think it's when the stars align, I believe it. They came to us and we had that conversation. We had already had 6 students that were lined up that would have been great. They communicated well. They had went through our life skills. They had done our customer service training. I just needed an employment opportunity to be able to place them. But not just any opportunity. Having somebody that has that same concept of let's work with our youth. They don't always have consistent transportation. They don't always have the opportunity to wash their jersey or their shirts that they're wearing for work. There's so many obstacles. We can give them as many skills and support that we can, but then when we hand them off, we want it to be a warm handoff to our partner. And it was the first time I felt like we could refer a student and know that they were consistent and they were true to their word, that they were going to work with our youth the same way that we would work with our youth. And that was, the team over at Civic Center. They just were great. They communicated with us. They talked to us about the opportunities that they had, the financial literacy component, as well as just hands-on customer service. We had went through our own customer service, but I think the students were on their phones probably the last hour. So it's good to reiterate. I feel like I'm constantly in a workforce that I need to learn to change and go with it. So, this was not one of my students, but I would have loved that.
That's just a fun picture.
Yeah. So it is just really important even though we came in later in the game, it still was really successful. I don't really have anything negative to say other than I didn't know what I was preparing my youth for. Physically, being able to be, I'm a visual learner, to be able to tell them what to look forward to. So that would just come in late in the game. That would be my only setback, is being able to have a full onboarding for what this process would be. That would be my own kind of, setback, but it was a wonderful program. They just were in line with what our mission is and what our goal is with our students.
The universe works in great ways sometimes.
Yes.
And, I think, Andrea, before I turn it over to you to answer the same question, one of the things we didn't realize at the Conservancy that I think we actually found out in the last week is how Youth on Record and Youth Employment Academy have been tied together for years. And so, Andrea, same question, being able to this not be a scramble come springtime for a summer launch, what do you look forward to in being able to sit and plan and dream a little bit bigger?
Yeah, I know, that was so exciting when I got added to the panel. I was like, Lori, we've been working together for about 8 years around workforce development, around our block party. So, just also to echo some of the stuff Lori was saying that I'll pass on, that Baba was saying was super important, is like the opportunity to not have the dictated of like, we want a DJ that is playing 80s music or this cover band, So they had a lot of flexibility in the creative control of who they were booking. Young people got to perform 30-minute sets back to back to back and then get coached in between those and get better. And we had students towards the end of the summer that were popping by the office to get their checks, and they're like, yeah, I was holding it down at Civic Center EATS today. Yeah, it's out in the sun. So, they're like really a part of our team now and our family. And so I'm excited to see like, how do we engage these young people that were part of that program this summer in more of a mentorship and a leadership role this next year. I think we learned some things around invoicing and collecting paperwork. That's just a constant struggle with any artist, to be honest. Being able to tighten up some of that. And then I think our entire staff went out for a staff day for the final day just to like celebrate. And I'm like, why did we not do this every single month? So we're going to build that into our staff development plan this next year. So we'll do once a month team outing, who can come, lunch is on us, and it's just nice. You need to do that more often. So.
Yeah, and I think from the Conservancy perspective, as we've looked at this with more time, we're in the business now of kind of creating these platforms like Civic Center EATS and assembling these tables with programmatic partners, with funding partners, and working towards that common goal. But we've already started to think about, there is a Day of the Dead celebration happening in Civic Center Park this Sunday. What great opportunity would it be for us to have a cadre of youth that we could involve in that festival and things like that, or shows that we're doing with AEG throughout the summer. Or what if we take it to the next level and we involve a Metro State or a CU Denver, and how do we tie into their hospitality programs and things like that? So
yes, to all of that.
But this is important in building these tables and continuing to build them and working in partnership is hugely important. And so one of the things that I saw Amanda Gash here earlier, back when her and I were doing Leadership Denver, her and I had a conversation, and one of the things that I've always noticed is folks on the foundation and on the corporate side sit in a unique position in this community to help solve problems. And so I'm gonna make a personal statement here about some things, but I want to ask the panel to react to it, is if youth employment is something that's super important to your organization, my question to you is, what are you doing to bring those organizations together? All the different organizations you're funding in that area to collectively figure out how we can be most efficient and how we can solve these issues. So that is one of my challenges to you, but I'm going to start with Erica as a funder. What do you think about that? What do you think about that concept of assembling the tables and being more proactive? We talked about that as that's one of the tenets of trust-based philanthropy, but building a table of the things that are important to you with other funders, programmatic partners that you're funding. Talk to me a little bit about how you feel about that.
Awesome. Well, I'll give another example, and it actually has to do with Denver Housing Authority. Do I have my banking partners in the room? We have a small group, yay, in the back, Marcia. We have a small group that's called Banking Allies Network of Colorado, and just a bunch of gals in very similar roles in financial institutions. And we started getting together socially just to have some wine, but then we heard how everything starts.
A lot of good ideas.
Exactly. They always get better the more wine, too. But we were partnering with the Housing Authority at that point when Renee was there in resident services. And she was talking about how she needed a financial navigator. And she was piecemealing this together to get a pool of funds to fund one person, which is probably woefully understaffed anyway. And so all of our banks got together and we gave 5,000 here, 10,000 there, and that is collective impact, which is we organized ourselves on the funding side of it and came to a nonprofit to say how, here's how we want to help. And I think that flipping the script on that a little bit is really, the onus is on us to coordinate and collaborate just as much as it is for the nonprofits to do that and to partner. Is that, I know
No,
I'm not
that's great.
quite answering.
That's great.
but-
I think the crowd agrees as well. Andrea?
Lori and I were just talking about this a little bit on the way here, actually. And we're a block away from each other. So we were like, why aren't we doing this? Why aren't we doing more of this together? And I think when you're in the nonprofit sector, your head is like down in the work. And so we have both felt that and had shared our stories on the way here, but we're like, oh, okay, you're doing this. We're trying to get into more events in the city, more music venues. Like, as we're looking at all these different ways to get placed in non-traditional, opportunities of work without going to a four-year degree college, what might not be a possibility for some of our young people. And so they're like, we're trying to do that with the hospitality side. I'm like, okay, how do we merge resources, collaborate, apply for some funding together? So I think we think about it here and there. I think that's the hardest part probably from my lens, is coming up for some air to partner.
And with me, I really do feel like corporate level, everybody wants to do good. Everybody knows and they see what the need is. It's just our job to implement it. We're doing the services. We're seeing the changes that you guys are seeing and the need. So when there are corporate sponsors, it's really just coming to the table with a team like this to really talk about, okay, this is what we would like to provide in the community. More than likely, the nonprofits are already doing it in some aspect, but it's how we're organizing and implementing and we have the street cred is what everybody tells me on my students. We've got street cred with Youth Employment Academy, but that's so important, is just to really have the ideas and not feel like you can't talk to us about how we can incorporate it or implement it. And I think that's where we used to have these walls up. Okay, well, we have all these great ideas, but no funding. And then we have the corporate level. We have all these ideas, and we have the money, but who do we work with that can actually engage and actually get those numbers and really see the impact? So I feel like it's a partnership. It's an extension of resources for our programs to have just this partnership in general.
Yeah. So we're going to open it up to audience questions in a second, but my challenge to everybody in this room is to continue to look at those tables that you can either create, that you can, when the invitation gets extended to you, to come sit at, to be engaged in conversation. Because, for 12 years, I've sat here in Civic Center Park, literally at the intersection of our business community, government community, and being a 501c3 nonprofit ourselves. So we need to be doing more of that as a community. I think we have a tendency to say, we can find this path ourselves, we can solve it, but I encourage us all to figure out what tables we can sit at, what tables we can create, and really work on this trust-based relational philanthropy idea. So with that, I think we're going to go ahead. We've got about 10, 15 minutes left. Would love to open it up to questions.
Thank you. So I work for Fidelity Investments. I've been there for a year, just over a year. Prior to that, I worked in the nonprofit sector for 5.5 years as a grant writer. So I understand both sides. And one thing that you touched on was the application side of being in the trust-based philanthropy, but what about the reporting side? And how do you encourage funders to walk away from data points and demographic points and those types of things? Because I think they're important in some cases, but in the sector that I worked, which was in that unhoused population, that's not information that clients really want to give up, nor does it really feel like it has to have that. You don't need that to justify the giving. So I'd love to know how you talk about that from a funder perspective, and then as well as from the nonprofit perspective.
Well, I'm curious from the funder side.
I was gonna say, Erica, unfortunately, I think this is a question you're best positioned.
But I echo the question for sure.
Well, it's not like we don't collect some data, and I understand that. I think in the application process, we still want to know who you're serving. I think it's interesting because I sat in on the last workshop talking about the gray and the green and reporting. We do need to make sure that we're connecting those resources with the greatest impact and making sure that we're reporting to the folks that give us the money that we get to give to you, that it is going to the greatest need. And so I think there is some baseline. Who are you serving? How are you serving them? How do you know if you're doing a good job? That has to be asked. But I certainly don't think that a funder should withhold funding if you are unable to collect the information because of who you're serving. Maybe there are other data points that can be used to help describe and have that funder experience and understand who you're impacting. It's telling your story, right? I mean, hopefully there was a workshop today, it's probably right now, about telling your story, but going back to being able to bring your funder on site, because then they'll see exactly who you're working with. Did that answer? I always want to.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that you can add to that is, again, in that conversation relationship, what's important for you as a funder on your end? So I can make sure, our team spent the past 2 days collecting video excerpts from the youth and some of the folks working in the park as part of Civic Center that we're going to be able to go and pass to Erica, that when she is going and having to rationalize this, it's going to tell as good of a story as any data that she could have asked us for. And so understanding that, and then nonprofit understanding, you do have a responsibility to help them tell their story internally. Another?
Hi, this is Lauren Sadler with McKinstry. I think my question piggybacks pretty well onto that. But oftentimes, I guess, trust-based philanthropy can feel a little nebulous, like what isn't and what is it not. So that's my question to the panel is, in your purview, what is not trust-based philanthropy?
I'll give an example, actually. We have turned funding down in the past when a company, which I won't say who they are, but they were very much like, you're going to have this money, but we need your students to act like this and be like this and show up like this and be excited when we present this thing to them. And so that doesn't work for us to put our students on display. And they were like, well, this isn't going to work. And so we walked away. So that's like an extreme side of things, but that's where the relationship piece comes in, coming down to see your work and your students and that kind of stuff.
My experience would be the same, so I don't want to, just give you a different example, but I really do think it's when they're looking for a specific mold of how we're serving youth or how we're getting our payback for the service that we're provided. So I want somebody in a program to do the same for the youth that I would if they left the door. I don't want to refer somebody or work with someone if they're spotlighting what their mission is, but they're doing something different. We want everybody to feel safe in all aspects, and I feel like, when you put limits to say, well, we'll serve only male or female or somebody with this skill set or college degree, we're putting those limits. And so working with a partner that really has that open concept to really serve the youth and the young adults that we're working with, that's where the trust comes in. I trust them because I'm still working with this youth. I don't want them to come back and say, I was really shut down and I have to build them back up again. We want to share. We want to refer them to something they're going to build off of, not something that we're going to have to come back and say, I'm so sorry, this was not what I intended for us to do, is to send you off. So it's just really trusting our agencies that we work with. And I think we do a pretty good job with who we work with. It's almost like our own interview when we have partnerships. We want to make sure we're all providing the same support.
I think one way to look at it really with trust-based, it is a continuum, right? And there's going to be relationships that are more trusting, there's more prescriptive. And I think that the closer you get as the funder to knowing or seeming that you're smarter than the actual program person in how to solve the problem, and it gets very prescriptive, that's where it tends to not be trust-based. Micah at Liberty Global gives us a great donation every year. They trust us to go and do what we do at the Conservancy, and that is trust-based philanthropy. If Micah said, well, you also have to do this sort of programming at this time on these days because my CEO is going to be there and he wants to be able to get the photo op, that doesn't feel very trust-based. And so I think thinking about requirements are okay, but how prescriptive and how much are they going to lessen the flexibility of the person actually doing the work becomes super important in that.
Can I add something just quickly? And most nonprofits, they have a way of their tracking. They're reporting internally. It just might look different. So just asking the partner, how do you track a success? Not what is successful to you might not be a success for somebody else. So it's really talking to the partner and saying, how do you capture that? What is, your tracking model? Because nonprofits, we really do internally track. It's not loose. We have a board that we have to report to. And so I think that sometimes just needs to be said that most nonprofits are tracking. It just looks a little different for everybody.
All right. I think we maybe have time for 2 more questions. All right.
Hi, Lauren Hornet with Wells Fargo. So I love the concept of collective impact, and I'm also a reformed nonprofit person. I spent 15 years of my career in the nonprofit space, and so a comment and a question. I think a comment, I love what you were talking about funders being proactive, but I want to caution us because when we're creating tables and then asking our grantees to, participate in this collective conversation, that could be actually a burden. That when we're trying to create this really positive impact, it could also be a time burden. I think we heard it from a couple of our panelists, and so, and I heard it earlier this morning when we, I think someone said, well, raise your hand if you're a nonprofit partner, and they said, well, ultimately there could be about half of you in the room, and so, but that's also I don't think that's our place as funders to dictate or designate while we can encourage it, if there's really going to help us drive deeper impact in a particular community, I think how we work together with our partners is really important. And so I just would love to hear from you all as panelists, that's a fine line. And so when are those kind of collective conversations helpful for you in your work? And when do you feel that it's really just one more thing and it's more of a burden or a requirement of a grant rather than really getting in that impact?
Would you like to take a stab at that?
I mean, I would think that our team would agree with this. As long as, let's go back to our mission. What's in our programming for this year? Is there a way to weave this in? Is there an extension to something that we're already doing? We don't often just create something from scratch, but I can't say that we would never do that either, because we are quite innovative. So I think there would just be a lot of conversations that we would have to make sure that it makes sense. And making sure that we have our team, in perspective as far as what's on their plates right now, and then same with our young people. Do we already have a group of 20 students coming to our workshop on Saturday? Great. Let's weave this in. So I don't know if I have a direct answer.
I think time horizon in that is important as well. If a funder is assembling a table to have something happen 2, 3, 4 months from now, that's really hard. That's really hard on our side of the thing. But you know what? This is really important to us. Invite us to that strategy session, but make sure it's worthwhile, I think is important. But I also think, from that perspective, it doesn't always have to be a meeting with 20 nonprofits and things like that. It's the conversation we had with Erica when this started. Well, what other youth organizations have you worked with, or who are you comfortable with, and things like that. Erica is everywhere in this town, and so she knows so many different people. And again, you just sit at that unique spot where a lot of the other folks in town. So I think that becomes important in it. But I appreciate that sense of, yeah, bandwidth is limited. And so if we're going to sit there, we'll probably come the first time. But if it's not worthwhile, it'll be hard for us to come the second, third, or fourth time.
Yeah.
Time for one more question, one or two more questions? Somebody else is keeping track of time.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kiara Gooseby with Goldenrod Consultants. This question is for Erica and the surrounding panel. So it was mentioned a couple times that relationships and trust take time. So what was the impetus for this particular relationship? Like, how did the Civic Center Conservancy get on your radar? And then how long did it take from the initial conversation to the disbursement of funds? So the trajectory of your partnership.
Well, the initial partnership started with learning about the Civic Center Works program in 2022 and being able to support that and having them come in for a grant. And so they became a known quantity for us and got on our radar when we saw them in action. Frankly, I'm in Republic Plaza and my window looks out over the Civic Center, so I'm constantly reminded, and I see them like ants down there, so I'm constantly reminded of their work. And I think that the team has done a good job of just being everywhere and engaging people in what does activation of Civic Center look like, and asking that question. And so it was kind of a natural evolution of, and serendipity too, because I didn't know that the team was having a conversation about social impact and how do we do more for the city. You know, I had some funds that I needed to be, again, a good steward of, and going to some trusted partners, you know, Sarah and Eric and Peep and Murphy, and just asking, I don't want you to shift your mission, but if this feels like a natural extension of the program that you were very effective in creating, what would that look like? And as far as the runway, it was like 2 weeks. Right? It was like we needed to deploy the funds, we needed to get moving, and then find some partners. And again, that was another, just how you just rallied around it and responded and got it off the ground, since we were almost at the beginning of summer anyway, that you threw this together.
Yeah, and the timing, like I mentioned, Bank of America's been involved in Conservancy in the past, but they had change in leadership, market president, all of that thing, you know, person that was in the CSR role. But we made it our point when we saw them sponsoring an event that we weren't necessarily involved in Civic Center Park, Chris Kindle Market, which will start in 2 weeks. Chris Kindle Market, November 17th. Our friends at the German Chamber would love for you to show up. Mile High Tree will be there.
Sponsored by United and Bank of America.
Yes, thank you. But, you know, all of a sudden Bank of America was demonstrating they have an interest in activations in our center city. And, you know, so I got to know Raju. I got to know Erica better. Sarah was doing the same thing. I found out Raju went to college with my uncle. And it was just about getting to know them, first of all. And, you know, part of our philosophy at the Conservancy drives from, I started asking for money when I worked in sports and was selling sports sponsorships. And it was we could never, as a sports sponsorship, sell anything that was a gold, silver, bronze package or a red, white, and blue. We had to talk to the corporate sponsor and fully understand what their needs were. So we'll leave it at that. Is the relationships are important. So when you're in environments like this, please do that. But thank you to all of our.
I have one more thing. I'm sorry. Okay, so subcommittee of the B Civic board is also asking, what does collective impact look like to you? And if you go down on the second floor, there is a board there with push pins and some sticky notes to answer that question. And so I hope that you will tell us, tell B Civic, tell funders, tell nonprofits, what does collective impact look like for you? How would you define it? What are the projects? So wander down there and please put a sticky on there.
Yes. And again, thank you all for being here. Thank you, panelists, for being here today. Thank you for being part of Civic Center. We truly do appreciate it. Thank you to all of you, and enjoy the rest of the time, and we're happy to chat more at happy hour.